Recording has begun. Welcome to Webex 201, hosting part 1. We did this yesterday, and I learned a lot. Thought I was halfway ready, and it turns out I had a lot to learn. So today we're going to try this again, and hopefully it will go much smoother this time. So the very first thing that you need to know is that we are talking about hosting, and there is a lot of topics. There are many topics involved in hosting a Webex. And so what we're going to try to do is break that into 2 sessions. We have session 1 now from 10 to 11, and we have session 2 from 11 to 12. We'll hold these again next week, as well as our Webex 101 and our 203, which is advanced items. It's going to be more of a play type session, I think, for our advanced class as we all get in and try to break things and have some fun next week. For 201 part 1, we're going to cover making sure you have the right tools installed. We're going to cover scheduling a meeting and inviting others to be a part of that meeting. We're going to talk about managing certain portions of the meeting, such as locking the meeting, handling audio and feedback issues that might come up during the meeting. How do you deal with Q&A sessions, dealing with raising of hands, basic intro to chat, and then we're going to deal with the part that everybody probably wants to get to first, but we'll do this last, sharing of screens, files, and media. So those are the items that we're going to cover today. So to start off, we are going to talk about installing the productivity tools and desktop clients. So to do that, I'm going to share my screen with you. And let me get my participants and chat windows back open here. All right. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. Can you guys see that now?
Yes.
Very good. So what we want to do, if you are using a Linear Tech piece of equipment, to get your stuff installed without administrative privileges being needed. This is good to do without contacting the help desk. If you click on your Start button or your Windows button and you type software, you're going to find the Software Center, and many of you may have already done this.
Mm-hmm.
In the Software Center, you're going to see many pieces of software. So if you haven't visited here before, it's a great place to be. But there are Webex productivity tools. Now, David, if you would check into something, I'm seeing multiple versions. That's the remove. Gotcha. Okay. So you see productivity tools from Webex and the meetings desktop. Both of these have the new label on mine because I've just seen these. So you're going to want to click on these and go install. Something that was mentioned before to folks, if you come in here and it says uninstall, that means it's already installed on your computer and you don't need to do anything. So that's very important. We don't want to uninstall that unless you're having a problem. I go back to applications. Again, the Cisco Meetings desktop app, I can install that. And again, you don't want to install that if this says uninstall. You don't want to click that button, I should say, if this says uninstall, because you already have it. It'll run through that process for you very quickly and efficiently, and we'll install everything for you. When it finishes, you should get something that looks very similar to this for your desktop client. Now, before I get into that, let's talk about if you're using a personal machine. How do you install on a personal machine? So let me get a web browser open here. So to install on a personal machine, we're going to go to lineartech.webex.com. We're getting some feedback. Let's see, if you are unmuted, please mute yourself. I appreciate that, guys. So here you have the Cisco Webex Meetings desktop app, and that's going to get you what you need to be able to do most everything. So that's the primary piece. You click download and go through the install process for that. You can install this on a phone. You can install it on a tablet. The app stores for Apple and Android and Google and Amazon Fire and all those devices do have a Webex meeting app. The question came up yesterday. If you've got a Kindle, Is that going to work? And if it's a Kindle Fire, the answer is yes. If it's a basic Kindle or a Kindle White or something along those lines, it will not, because those don't have video capabilities, and I don't even know if they have mics in them. Typically, if you can browse the web and see full colors, and you can go to YouTube on the web and watch videos, you should be able to download the Cisco Webex desktop app. So that'll get everything installed for you, and you'll be able to see this. When it comes up the first time, it may ask you for a URL, and I don't have an example of that for you right now, but I can tell you it is that, and this is something you just need to memorize, laniertech.webex.com. So if it does ask you for a site or a URL, put in laniertech.webex.com. To sign in, if it does prompt you to sign in, especially if you're on a non-LTC owned laptop, then you can use your LTC credentials, so your email address and your password, and it should get you in without any problems. It is enabled with multi-factor, so if you are off campus or using a personal device, you're going to get prompted for that code that comes to your phone, or to use the Authenticator app, or to get a telephone call, something along those lines. But that will allow you to then get signed into the Cisco WebEx Meetings app. I'm going to mention this to try to, as a point of clarification, we are launching Microsoft Teams, which has a lot of amazing capabilities. And when you go out to look at Cisco WebEx stuff, you're going to see this thing called WebEx Teams. Don't let the word Teams confuse you. So WebEx Meetings is what you want for our purposes, not WebEx Teams. And don't confuse WebEx Teams with Microsoft Teams. Again, I know that does sound a bit confusing, but remember, for the purposes of hosting a WebEx, you want WebEx Meetings, and you do not need WebEx Teams. When we do our Teams training, that'll be Microsoft Teams, which is a different product from Microsoft, not from Cisco. I was asked to repeat the URL. That is laniertech.webex.com. Hopefully everybody can see the window that's here in front of me. The way we're going to set up our scheduling is via personal room. There are other ways to do that. You can schedule many different types of ways in WebEx. We're going to show you the way that I prefer, and the way the meetings seem to go the best, in my personal opinion, and that is to use your personal room. And again, that URL, laniertech.webex.com, comes into play here. And you can see what you do is add a /meet/ahardy, and ahardy is the first portion of my email address, everything before @laniertech.edu. So again, I'll put this up here in a little bit larger font. And this is really just the username. So if you insert your own username here, you can give that link out to folks. And if you hit start meeting, which you would see here, and we'll talk about starting a meeting in just a few minutes, but once you've got the desktop client installed, you'll see start meeting, hit that, and then people will be able to join you in your personal room. Also, if you give this link out and someone goes there and you are not in your meeting, it will send you an email and say, so-and-so is waiting in your personal room. And it's up to you as to whether or not you actually want to go open up your room and start a meeting with them. That's kind of like a telephone call. You don't have to answer every time it rings, but it's usually good practice too. But again, if you're in the middle of things, like right now, if somebody were to get into one of your personal rooms and you got the email, you're in the middle of a meeting. Dave Parrish says that using the snipping tool or screen capture will help you grab some key pieces of info. I'm guessing you're referring to what's going on in this meeting, and that is absolutely true. I can also tell you that there are very short versions of this video, a much shortened version that I'll be coming out with, and we'll put all these topics in small 1 to 2 minute videos so that you can go out and grab those. So if you're, well, what was that URL? And you can go out, how do you share a meeting? How do you schedule a meeting? And it'll be in that, and those will be coming out probably the first part of next week. So with that, we have gotten the desktop client installed, and we have looked at how to install that from a personal machine. Now we're going to move over into scheduling it, and we're going to assume that you have the desktop client on a LanierTech device. We'll talk about scheduling a meeting. No, you cannot have control of my computer. So we'll talk about that. We'll cover that. We'll have a lot of fun in the advanced class, I think, doing that. So we will be talking about scheduling from the desktop client, and we will be talking about scheduling it without the desktop client, if you're on a personal machine without Outlook, I should say. So to start with, if you're on a Linear Tech computer or a Linear Tech laptop, if you have your Microsoft Outlook open, you go to your calendar. And this makes it so easy. Again, you have to have the productivity tools installed and the desktop client installed for this to work. So I double click where I want as if I were going to make a meeting. I invite my attendees, and again, for an instructor, you may put student email addresses in here. For a staff member, other people within your department or across the institution, we can do all different types of things that you can install right here. And then put in your subject. So I'm just going to put in test it and a subject of test. And the location, I always just put Webex if it's going to be a Webex meeting. Again, this is all standard fare for a meeting invitation. This should be nothing new if you're used to using your Outlook calendar. If you want to schedule a recurring meeting, say you've got a class and you prefer to use Webex instead of Blackboard Collaborate, you can hit recurrence and you can set it up on specific days of the week. Maybe it's just going to be a Monday and Wednesday, and it's going to come up on those days every week. You can tell it to end on a certain day in May, perhaps, something like that. And that recurring will then set up and be a recurring appointment throughout your calendar. I'm going to remove the recurring here. I don't want that. So we've done all that, and that's, again, is all very standard fail. So what you want to do now is add your personal room. So if you click the little drop down, you've got Webex meeting, personal room, or personal conference meeting. I like personal room. Again, that is just my preference. The reason I like personal room is because it gives you the same link every single time. I've seen it happen more than one time where someone has scheduled a meeting and they needed to make a change, or some other meeting got scheduled by that same individual, and you ended up with two links to two different meetings at the same time, but it was really supposed to be the same meeting. If you're using personal room, it's always going to go to that URL that we talked about earlier, lineartech.webex.com/join/your username, or meet. Join and meet actually work the same way there. So this makes it very simple though. We add our personal room. It's going to communicate with it, and it automatically has it there. It has information if the person doesn't have a computer and they need to dial in, they can hear audio right there, and it gives them the meeting number. All those types of really wonderful things, and you can hit, if they click on the join meeting, you're going to see lineartech.webex.com/join/ahardy. Again, /join and /meet are the same thing. That's just two different terms, but they actually end up in the same place. Adding that was really simple. Canceling it is really simple. Cancel personal room. So I'm going to add my personal room back, and I'm going to go ahead and send this. So now we've got that scheduled. Now let's pretend that we are in the web version. Actually, we won't even pretend. I'll just actually open up the web version here. Say you're on a personal machine. The question was, can we put in our personal room link along with hours available in our course for students? That's up to you. You can do that. Absolutely, 100%. There's no reason that you can't use your personal room for office hours. I know Blackboard Collaborate has some office hour functionality as well. I'm not touting one over the other. I want to make that very clear. This is just an alternate tool. When I was discussing and explaining to Dr. Perrin, Webex is a different type of screwdriver, but it's still a screwdriver, just like Blackboard Collaborate is a screwdriver. Maybe one's a flathead and one's a Phillips, and in some situations one works a little better than the other one, but sometimes they both work. So it really just depends on you. Let me go into my Outlook really quick. And my calendar. Well, I should have gone into calendar. Right here. So again, pretend we're on a personal machine and we need to be able to schedule a meeting. And I'm an instructor, and this is the same thing. in very much the same way. I'm going to do a new meeting by simply double clicking on the time slot. I'm going to set all the options, dates and times, and there's some recurring options that are in here. But I'm going to, I don't think I can do it through that. No. So you can do Skype and Teams, but you can't do it through there. So what I want to do, I've got the desktop client installed. This makes it easy, even on a personal machine. If you have this, you'll see this little icon to the right. So you don't even have to remember that URL really. You can just hit copy. That's very, very nice. And then I can say, boom, and I can even put it Webex because that's what I always use. And you don't have to do that. That's just a text. That's not actually a link to anything. Meeting. And that link is what people will see and click whenever they come to that meeting. And I can invite folks to that meeting right here. Start typing in their email address. And again, you can type in student email addresses or anything like that. And this is, we're not covering how to use the Outlook web client for scheduling items, but I do want you to see that you would simply take and put that URL in the body of the invitation, and that will allow people to be able to see it and click it, and they would be able to join your meeting. Again, that's why I like a personal room. It's the same link. If you use one of those unique links that Webex has, you can't really do it this way. And that's why I very, very much like being able to use the personal room for everything. So with that, we've covered how to schedule both on a Linear Tech machine using the desktop client and without the desktop client. Now let's cover starting a meeting. So we're going to do this from a Linear Tech machine. And initially, I'm going to show you how to do it without having the desktop client installed. So if you're on a personal machine and you haven't had time to grab and do that, this is how you would start your meeting. Underneath, you can go to the Linear Tech homepage, and underneath quick links, go to the faculty and staff portal. If you guys haven't been here, this is a great tool, and I would highly recommend getting in here and taking a look at this. We've got OneDrive, Webex, and Microsoft Teams that will help you, help us form, etc. So we can click on Webex here to get to our Webex site, or you can go to lineartech.webex.com. That's up to you, whichever way to get to this point you prefer. And again, we're doing this as if we were on a personal machine without the desktop client installed. And I'm going to log in, because I have to be logged in to start a meeting. Students do not have to be logged in to attend, or other staff members do not have to be logged in to attend, but you do have to be logged in order to start a meeting. And so you can see right now, I've already logged in and it's set and ready to go. And it's as simple as clicking start a meeting. Now, if I wanted to start this meeting without having the desktop client installed, I can click join from your browser. In this case, we're not going to talk about hosting from a browser, because you certainly can do that. But I'm definitely going to recommend that you have the desktop client installed. Again, to install that, if you're on a Linear Tech laptop, use Software Center, like we covered at the very beginning of this meeting, to install that. If you are on a personal machine, you want to use the download that automatically happens when you go to start, or through that other means to download that I showed you. It does not require administrative privileges to install the basic desktop client. This is going to install and then start our meeting. And it's going to show us that new preview window, which we looked at every single time that we've done this. So I'm not going to go into detail on this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and just click start meeting. So now if I can get a couple of folks to drop out and join me at the Test It meeting here. I think really the IT staff are who I'm asking to do this. People that are attending this can stay. When you're setting your meeting up, one thing I like to do is mute on entry underneath the participants menu. And what that's going to do, whenever folks do join, you're going to see that they are, Larry, here comes Larry, that they are automatically muted. And you can also note here, you've had a participant change. You see that red dot? And the same thing if you have a new chat message and you don't have this window open, you're going to see thank you, Larry. You're going to see the little red dot there. One thing I like to do at the start of every meeting is open up my participants and my chat. Very good. We can see everything. Something that I couldn't show you before because I didn't have an interface to show you that we talked about yesterday, and this is really an end user thing, is the ability to change the layout. Go to grid view. So if you have 4 people in here, you'll see 4 windows, or you can go to, I don't know what that view is called, active speaker view window, or active speaker and thumbnail. Now what the thumbnail is going to do is going to put everybody else down here at the bottom, and that is the default. So that's very important that you're aware of that. We talked about in our intro meeting, in our intro 101 class, how to go to floating panel view, which is going to maximize everything. And we can click that same icon again, and it's going to shrink everything back down. And so those are things that are important to know. Now, the next thing that I want to show you guys is after we've done mute on entry, you've got an unmute all and a mute all button here. You're going to notice right now I cannot click the mute all, and that's because everybody except for me is muted. One of you guys want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Very good. And you can see that, yes, we can. Thank you, Chad. Chad no longer has the red mic icon, so he is unmuted. Now, because someone other than me is actually unmuted, I can click mute all, and I can mute them again. Now, you may not want to do that. You may not want to mute every single individual all the time. You may want to be able to unmute them one at a time. And, oh, we've got another person here. Let me move this down just a little bit so we can see. Gotta get that just right to get those arrows. There we go. And so if I'm going to unmute Chad, I can just click that, and it automatically unmutes him with that one click. And I'm back. And he is back. And we can hear Chad. Now, of course, he can unmute himself, and he can also take care of muting or unmuting his video or audio, either way that he prefers to do so. If I want to send, there we go. Thank you, Chad. And as we talked about in 101, that's what you see when your video is muted. If I want to send a chat message specifically to Chad, I can click on the little chat bubble icon, just like the little chat bubble icon down here. And you're going to note it automatically selects his name. Or I can simply select the person's name from the list here, and it will send them a private message. There goes. Lovely, Chad. Secret stuff. Those are things that only that Chad and I can see. So that's a very handy thing here. We talked about being able to raise hands in our meetings, and you guys couldn't actually see that feature, but I think we tested it. So there you go. Larry has just raised his hand, so you can see from the host side now what that looks like. Now we've got Chad Womble raising his hand as well. So now what I could do is I could say, okay, Larry, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead and ask your question, please. I don't know if Larry's having mic issues or if he's just being shy. It's definitely not Larry's thing. Okay, Larry, so I'm going to unmute Chad and have him go ahead and speak for us.
What time is breakfast?
Breakfast is over, sir. You should have already eaten. My goodness. Breakfast was at 6 o'clock this morning. Now, we talked about muting and unmuting, raising of hands, and we talked about our chat. One of the things that I think is also important is what happens if somebody is muting and unmuting themselves when you don't want them to. And we cover that in depth in our part 2, but I'm going to show you really quickly here. I can expel them from the meeting. I'm not actually going to kick anybody out here, but if I click expel, it's going to kick them out of the meeting, and they won't be a problem. Now, let's say I have expelled them. I don't know what the issue is, Larry. I heard you earlier, so I'm not sure. Maybe this virtual WebEx within a WebEx type thing, maybe giving us hiccups today. But let's say you do kick somebody out and they come back, and you kick them out a second time and they come back. Or let's say you have a private meeting and you don't want to have anybody else join. Maybe you're doing advising for an individual student and you don't want to have anybody else join your personal room. because anybody can, if they know that link, they can join your personal room at any time. You can lock the meeting, and you'll notice the little icon shows up here at the top right. And that means no one else can join right now. So if I kick someone out and expel them, they will not be able to actually get back in. And I can very quickly unlock that meeting too. So those are things that are really, really handy. And lastly, the thing that everybody's really here for is sharing screens, files, and media. So we're going to come down here to the bottom where we have share content. And again, we talked about this very briefly in our previous 101 session, but more in depth now, we'll talk about what it is to actually share things. So you can share a screen or an application. If you have Windows open, it'll show you, like if I open up another window here, let's open up a File Explorer window. And now when I click on share, I should see, well, it's not showing me for some reason. I think I was in the right place. That's okay. I can share the entire screen. Now, when I put my mouse over that, take a look at where the orange border is. As you guys can see, I can't point, but it goes around the entire outside. Whereas if I look at sharing just Google Chrome, it's only going to share that one particular application. And you want to take into consideration what you're sharing. So just as whenever we ask you to look at your background visually, whenever you're getting ready to join a meeting to make sure there's nothing in the background that shouldn't be, the same kind of thing applies when you're getting ready to share your screen. Make sure there are things without sensitive information that are visible. Nothing with sensitive information should be visible, obviously. So I'm going to share the entire screen. Now, the first thing you're going to notice, and this is the thing that was most confusing to me whenever I first started using Webex, is where did all my controls go? Where is all my Webex stuff at? It's gone. And what is actually being shared? So if you'll see, there is a green bar that goes around the entire area. So they can see my start button, search windows. They can see all these things. They can see my clock. Everything that's got surrounded by that green line is visible to the attendees of the meeting. But right now, I can't see if they're trying to chat to me. I can't see if they're muting or unmuting. I can't mute or unmute them very easily. I can do a little bit from over here in the previews, but not very easily. So what do? I go use my mouse up top where this orange "You're sharing your screen" button is. You can drag this thing around if it gets in the way of some of your stuff. But you also can turn on your participants and chat again. So anytime I go to share, you're going to see me take just a couple of brief seconds to move my participants and my chat windows around. You won't necessarily know what I'm doing, but if you notice my eyes are looking down and to the side and dragging things around, that's because I'm rearranging those windows really quickly. Basically, so they can see everything that's on here. And again, when we get into advanced, we're going to go into the annotations, and I'll just really briefly show you. Over here and pull a pin, and you can write on top of your screen and things like that. But again, we'll go over that more in the advanced class. When I'm here, I can also share additional things. Let's say share multimedia. So if I have a link to, say, a YouTube video, I should be able to put that in here, and it will automatically show that. Now, what I would recommend is not trying to share more than one thing at a time. I would probably only share one thing at a time. So I would stop sharing. And let's say I want to share a specific file. Let's share this PowerPoint. Now, there are two ways to do that. You can share your screen, and the entire screen will come up, or you can share, you guys can read through those notices when you want to, or you can share the PowerPoint directly by picking the file. Depends on how you're used to using PowerPoint. If you're used to using PowerPoint where you can simply click or use your mouse button to scroll down through, then you need to share your screen and use PowerPoint on your computer. And that's probably the way most of you will do it. But I wanted to show you this way because this one will allow me to page through. So again, it's a different interface. And if you guys could that are in the meeting, Chad, Larry, or Marsha, if you guys can confirm that you're actually seeing me change these slides. Very good, got a text confirmation. And of course, I can do annotation here. I can pick my pen tool and I can write on top of the the slide. I can pick a different color, black. So there's all types of different things we can do here. And again, we'll get more into the annotations when we are in the advanced course. Let's see, if I have personal chat with another attendee, can the host see this? I don't believe so. If you want to try it real quick, you can pick another person and I'll tell you whether or not you can see it. Just send me a message again afterwards and tell me that you sent something. When I want to exit out of this PowerPoint or the whiteboard, yes, there we go. We got shared tools as we discovered yesterday. Chad Womble is putting things in. We'll cover more of annotations and whatnot in our advance. So I'm going to close this out. It's going to ask me, make sure that I really want to close, and I'm going to say yes. And it's going to ask me if I want to save it, which would save it with the annotations on top. I'm going to say no. If you want to share a video, again, if you can just open the video up on your machine and play it, but this may be a better way to keep everything 100% in sync. This was a not a video here, I'm sorry. This is a picture that I pulled. So you guys can see that, and everyone on the other end sees it. If I close this out, I'm not going to save that document. I'm going to share yet another document here. And did I not pull a video? Okay, so I'll pull this PDF. Ooh, that one. Don't need to do that, hopefully. Yes, I can just click no on that. Didn't have to put in any sort of an informational, any sort of administrative credentials there. So we're good to go. Turn the PDF sideways. So again, you can see sharing files directly is something you'll need to test because you're going to find strange things that happen. I can still move between pages, but there's no real good way to rotate this or anything like that. So it may not show properly. So if I were going to show this PDF, what I would do is minimize my Webex for a moment, open up the PDF on my computer, go back to my Webex, and see now I can share just that. I can share the entire screen, or I can share just, we talked about sharing just that specific application. Now it's labeled correctly and it's open correctly. So, and when I close that out, I don't have to unshare anything because it automatically did that for me. Now, with 51 folks in here, one of the things that I want to talk about, I'm going to touch base on, and we'll cover this more in part 2 that comes up at 11 o'clock, is how you manage your chat, your audio, and your moderation when you have a larger number of people in the meeting. And again, I want to make sure that everybody knows we will cover that in our 11 o'clock session that comes up here in, 25 minutes or so. So that is, we've covered all the topics that we intended to cover. It's a very quick thing. Here's another way to lock meeting there. We'll cover polling in the advanced class too. So just be sure to try to attend that or watch the recording after we get finished next week. But does anybody have any questions? Let's see, you got one from Dave. You guys can feel free to raise your hand or unmute. Actually, it's probably best to unmute yourself because there are 51 folks in here and it's a bit difficult for me to scroll up and down and find that raised hand. So go ahead.
Anthony, this is Brad.
Yes, sir.
What you were saying about personal rooms and how it helps to not have multiple or conflicting versions, that makes sense. I'm glad to hear that because we have that problem often. My question is, so, Betsy, Joanne, and I work closely together. We have, usually Betsy sets up the meetings. If she does that using the personal room, does she have to log in and get in the meeting for other people to be able to join?
Yeah, I believe so. There are a couple things that we're testing before we go into the advanced class, and that's going to be, scheduling meetings on behalf of other folks. We haven't had a chance to do all the testing for that yet, so we'll have that answer before Wednesday next week. That's about the best I can tell you right now. But she could always, instead of adding personal room, she could just paste the link in there.
Okay.
We did if we were using a non-LTC computer. When people click that link, it'll open up and go into the correct personal room that she's put in that schedule.
Oh, I have second question.
Okay.
So I've been using Webex a lot, as you know, and it always was pretty seamless and easy. In the last week, I guess it's y'all have been upgrading and rolling stuff out. When I use the desktop client to schedule a meeting, everything seems normal and it shows up on my scheduled meetings, but there's no join button either in the client or in Outlook.
Are you're scheduling from a Linear Tech laptop or computer that's on the domain?
Yep.
I don't know. That's something we'd probably have to look into with a ticket, because obviously I've been using it nonstop here the last few days, and it's been doing okay. So there may be something specific there that we have to dig
Okay,
into
I'll
and figure out
schedule a
what it
tech
is.
meeting today, and if it happens again, I'll put in a ticket. Okay, I'm done.
Sure. Sounds good. All righty, thank you. So another question from Dave Parrish. If we use WebEx for instruction with students, do we direct them to Cisco's WebEx site for troubleshooting? If they have what type of issues, I guess, are IT can provide support for WebEx to a certain level. It's going to be difficult. The one thing I'm going to tell you is next week is going to be absolutely crazy with every single course moving online. There's going to be a ton of questions. We're going to prioritize instructors because instructors need to be able to deliver content even over students. As much as I hate to say that, students will be a very, very close second. But if instructor is trying to have a class, that affects a larger number of students than a single student not being able to attend a session. Of course, now we're not going to let them sit for days at a time, obviously, but we are going to push hard to make sure that instructors can deliver the content. We cannot support Blackboard Collaborate. That's all Angelia and Wendy, because we don't even have access to those tools. So please keep that in mind. But we will have to do our best and ask you guys to be patient with us next week as we work to support as much as we can. Brad, is that your question about personal rooms then is answered, I suppose? I think it was. Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you, Anthony.
Yes, sir. Yes, and Dave McMurray just posted in chat that we're revamping the help desk line to prioritize instructors hosting class over other kinds of calls. We're trying to do a couple of changes there. So if you call, and again, if you do decide to use WebEx, we'll do our best to support you, but make sure you call if you have a class emergency. You're in the middle of class and students can't hear you at all or something like that. Again, you may lose a class session because of this. But what I hope and I encourage everyone to do is to test. Start your room, get into your personal room and actually start a session and get everything functional. I think that's going to be a really critical thing for this. And I think you guys have already been doing a very large amount of that anyway. But just wanted to make sure we reiterated that. Do you have any other questions? All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, then I will end this meeting and I'll see you guys. I'll open back up in about 10 minutes, at about 10 minutes till 11. I'm going to stop the recording now.